Okay, I see there's some people here already. Good afternoon and welcome to the August edition of Frank Talks. I'm thrilled to have you all here with us. And for those of you who are new to Frank Talks, we are an initiative hosted by Frank Fam, which is a full service agency that covers communication, branding, customer experience, engineering, media, and storytelling. And we believe that by integrating these disciplines in a cross-functional way, we can create something meaningful and impactful. And if you would like to learn more about us, please feel free to visit our website at frankfam.co. This talk will be approximately around 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A session at the end. So please write any questions you have, reflections or thoughts in the chat here in the Zoom during the talk, and we'll go through them afterwards. Yeah, let's see. And so please stick around for that. And we will also provide live subtitles during the talk. In this, so we have let's see, where can you find this? Yeah, below in the Zoom interface, you can, if you require them. And this talk will also be recorded. So I'm excited to introduce our speaker for this Frank Talk, Michael Strix. He is a copy and UX writer with a background in theater and years of experience of script writing. He's an expert in storytelling. And today we're lucky to have him as an employee at Frank Fam. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and for that lovely introduction. I'm also glad to be here. Things could have been very different, actually. When I was a teenager, I was very close to becoming, I would say, one of Sweden's most hated people because I was this close to killing Astrid Lindgren, the world-famous Swedish children's book author who wrote Pippi Longstocking, among others. Okay, so this was in the late 90s. I was a young actor at the Royal Dramatic Theatre of Sweden. It was a couple of days before Christmas, and I had been given a chance of a lifetime. I was going to play the lead role in Astrid Lindgren's Mio My Son, Mio Min Mio. And in just a few minutes, it would be the opening night. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I paced back and forth in the darkness on the stage floor. The giant curtain was down, and behind it, I could hear the nearly 1,000 people taking their seats in the auditorium. I knew that Björn and Benny from ABBA was there, the theater director, of course, and critics from all the major media outlets. Crown Princess Victoria was also there, but she paled in comparison to the most honored guest, who had been placed right in the middle at the very front, Astrid Lindgren. On a small monitor next to the stage, you could see the audience, and there I saw Astrid sitting just behind Annette, an older woman who was the prompter for the show. I felt the adrenaline pumping through my body. I was nervous, but I was ready, and I went back on stage behind the curtain, and the smoke machines started hissing and filling the stage. Just 3 minutes before the start, the show of the start, Janne, the choreographer, came over. He wanted to make one last adjustment, and he said, Michael, one tiny thing. In the final battle, when the evil knight strikes your arm and you drop the sword, could you just spin around once and then let go of the sword and continue as usual? Sure, no problem, I replied. And soon the curtain rose. And it went well. When the curtain came down for the intermission, we got thunderous applause, and I felt enormously focused and strong. It's a pretty extreme feeling for the ego, I can tell you. And soon the second act was underway, and we were approaching the climax of the show, the final battle where I was supposed to stab the evil knight in the heart with a sword. And soon came the moment when I had to follow the new instructions from the choreographer. So I took the hit on my arm. I remember to spin around once with a sword and then let it go. And that's when time stops. I had completely misjudged the extra power you get when you're on stage. because instead of landing on the stage floor, the sword lifts off towards the audience and spins directly towards Astrid Lindgren in the front row. I have so many thoughts as I'm watching that sword. It really is like it's going in slow motion. Soon the sword will hit Astrid Lindgren right in the head with full force. But then a shadow leaps up from her seat into the sword's path. Annette, the prompter, stretched out like a soccer goalie, breaks the sword's path and hands it back to me from the edge of the stage, and the show could go on. And so could my career in theater for a while at least. I worked on stage until I was 25, and then I felt I wanted to explore my creativity in another industry, preferably with somewhat more normal working hours, and to be completely honest, something a bit more lucrative. So that's why I was thrilled when I ended up in the advertising world. I have directed and written scripts for quite a few companies, including some of the ICA sketches. And over the years, I've specialized in storytelling. And that's not just like fictional stories and advertising tales, although the techniques are quite the same. But today I'm going to talk about how you can craft interesting real stories. And that is something that all organizations and people can benefit from improving. To emphasize this, I can mention a British study that shows that as much as 65% of our conversations somehow take the form of a story. But perhaps the most interesting research has been done at Princeton University, where Einstein used to hang out. With an MRI scanner, they could see that a storyteller and a listener exhibit the same brain activity if the story being shared is engaging. So you could say that stories act as a glue between the storyteller and the listener. And sometimes we talk about escapism when it comes to stories, how wonderful it is to lose oneself in another story. But probably an even stronger advantage is that we can find ourselves in someone else's story. So sharing a story is generous and brave. It shows that we are human. And when we show that, we become credible. And that creates trust. So it's also that we learn and we come closer to each other, which makes it a very powerful tool, both in customer relations and also with our coworkers. Okay, so my hope after this talk is that you will feel inspired to work more with storytelling, and how you want to use it is really up to you. But for example, before you start presenting the numbers for Q3, why not tell a story? You might even be able to connect it to your numbers, or you can use it as a team building exercise. I can guarantee you that you will get to know and understand each other much better if you pause the talk about the latest Netflix series or the weather for a while and instead share a personal story. And for example, if you have a work experience with a project that had challenges where you might not even have managed to solve problems, but learned a lot, that can make for a great story as well. And okay, so you will notice that I talk about things experienced by a person, not by a company. And maybe it not need explaining, but it's very rarely engaging what a company experiences. We want to hear about the people. And I will give you 5 very concrete tools or techniques that you can start using right away when you craft your own story. And the first tools are sort of like the backbone of the story, and the latter are more tactical, you could say. And we'll get to that very, very soon. But first, we need to quickly mention what a story really is. We humans, most of us at least, we strive for some form of balance in life. And let's see here if I can share my there we go. Here we go. You see the line. Okay, so we want predictability and avoid mishaps and misfortunes. And if something must happen, well, we want that to be a good thing, right? That we win the lottery, or that everyone loves us, or that everything goes exactly as we have planned. But the human experience is full of bumps. And every bump in the curve, whether it's shallow or deep, is the origin of a story. So even events considered positive here, like falling head over heels in love, can in this context be a bump, because when we fall deeply in love, we tend to lose ourselves. And after all, it is called falling in love. Okay, so this is a challenge for companies that want to work with storytelling. We are naturally drawn to accidents, mishaps, and when things don't go as planned. But that is key in almost every story. But far from all companies and the persons behind it want or dare to share mishaps. I see many companies that say they are working with storytelling, but often stop at what is usually called a narrative. So narrative doesn't need to have a dramatic curve or a before and after or even emotions. It's enough that it's just like sequential. For example, uh, the company was founded in 2004 by John and Jessica in a small city outside Stockholm. By 2007, the company had grown to have 20 employees and a turnover of 10 million crowns. Today, the company is one of the largest in Scandinavia. And that curve would look something like this. That may absolutely have its place, but it's hardly a story. It's narrative. I hope you kind of get the difference. All right. I'm gonna cancel the screen sharing there. All right, so where do you start then? How can you find your story? Well, the answer is often to look for a feeling. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like the biggest emotions to make a good story. It could be something like this. Uh, I had been looking forward to going back to work after my parental leave, but when I returned, it didn't feel the same satisfaction as I'd felt before. It's hard to say exactly why, but after 3 weeks, it became really dull going to work. And by mid-September, I decided that I had to do something about it. Should I quit or stay and fight to find that joyful feeling again? Okay, a good way to quickly get ideas for several potential stories is by using something I call story cards. I have some of them here, and they contain a lot of themes that can spark your thoughts and like nudge you in a direction. So here, for example, here it's a summer. Tell about an unexpected holiday memory or something, maybe something really went wrong. I think many have experienced that. Or uh, this one, for example, skräck, fright, a time when you were really, really scared. Or lost. Tell us when you lost something valuable. I think you get the idea. So once you have an idea for a story, and as I said, it can be something small, we can start exploring it and working with it. All right, let's dig into the first tool. And I will recap these in the end. So I won't show any slides right now. Number one, a good story needs a desire. You are probably the main character in your story. What did you want in the story? What did you want to achieve? So a desire functions sort of like the engine of your story, and it makes us as listeners want to hear how it will end. And even seemingly small desires can work very well. For example, after we had been walking for an hour, I felt thirsty in a way I'd never had before. But there was absolutely no drinkable water inside. I've never been so thirsty in my entire life. Okay, so try to clarify your desire early in the story. It gives us a good reason to listen. Number two, also kind of the backbone of the story, and that is what's at stake. What were you about to win or lose? In the story that I told earlier, it was my career, my big dream at the time that was at stake. So asking what's at stake in the story is a good way to test if it holds and if it's engaging enough. If it didn't matter either way what happened, if nothing changed, and you didn't learn a single thing, well, then the story probably is too weak, I'd say. And number 3, and now comes the first tool that I call more like tactical, and it's very effective. Make sure to use your senses. So the next time you hear someone retell something, I can almost guarantee that that person won't give a detailed sensory description. And that's a shame because it adds so much to the experience of the story. So make sure to use that opportunity because it's so enjoyable for the listener. And the most common thing to describe, the most common thing to describe is obviously how something looked. But remember that we have more senses. Do you want to describe how it sounded in a scene, or maybe how the shirt stuck to your back when it was 40 degrees outside, or the taste of iron in your mouth when you were a kilometer from the finish line in your first marathon? Were there any smells? A friendly warning though, too many descriptions can easily slow down your story. So aim for 1, 2, or possibly 3 strong sensory impressions. Number 4, be specific. So even if you don't remember, so you might have heard someone beginning a story sort of this way. Something happened to me last spring. It must have been early April, or actually it can't have been April because I wasn't home at that time. It must have been late March. Or wait, then it's hardly spring. Okay, so that's not a good start. What happens is that we don't really trust that your memory is accurate, and it doesn't seem to have made a big impression on you. So even if you don't remember if you were 24, 25, or 26 when you went interrailing in Europe, choose confidently. It probably doesn't matter much for what you're going to tell if it happens to be wrong. And the same goes for what the weather was like, or for how many weeks you tried to persuade a customer, and so on. And so be specific with confidence. And the last point, number 5, I want to share with you, although there are, of course, many more techniques, but that is to tell your main scene as if you were there. That is, tell it in the present tense. So when we tell stories with our voice, we actually tend to switch tenses a bit randomly anyway. But when it comes to the main part of your story, take us along as if it's happening right now. Okay, here comes another example. I walk up to the man who is lying completely motionless. It looks like he's not breathing, or is he? I don't dare to touch him with my hand, so I reach out with my foot and gently poke his body. All of a sudden, he jumps up and I fly backward and land on my back. All right, I think true stories are best when they are told with your voice. So I think you should start there, and then maybe it can be written down later or turned into a film or serve as inspiration for other outputs. And I would say you should aim for 2, maybe a maximum of 5 minutes, something in between there, and divide it into 3 or 6 scenes. I think that would be a good benchmark. All right, I'll recap the 5 tools for you so you can see them again. There we go. And I read them as well. Desire. What did you want to achieve in the story? Or avoid? That can also be a desire. And number 2, what's at stake? What were you about to win or lose? And 3, don't forget to use your senses. Remember, we have more than our eyes. Number 4, be specific, even if you don't remember exactly. And the last one, present tense. So tell your main scene like it happened right now. Before I'll be happy to answer any questions, I want to give you one last piece of advice, and that is that there are thousands and thousands of books, TED Talks, and so on about storytelling, and I realize that this is also one of them. feel free to check out more. It's really fun. But what I've realized after doing this for a while is that it's very easy to get stuck in techniques, different dramatic curves, and the like. And the outcome can be stories that feel a bit mechanical and not so authentic. So to get good at storytelling, don't think too much. You just need to do it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Michael. That was really valuable tips, how to really get your audience to listen and to get them to remember you. I've got a couple of questions on the side and also one in the chat so far, and the rest of you are welcome to please write some questions. The question that we have in the chat is, where could I get such story cards?
I've got a bunch of them, so the best thing would be to contact us, I guess, after this. I think you can find the contact information on there. I actually designed these myself, so they're not, you can't buy them anywhere, not that I've seen at least. But contact us and I'll let you know how to get them.
Great. Please do so. And yeah, our website is frankfam.co. Another question is, how do you work with storytelling today in your daily work life?
Well, it can be in many different ways. That's a bad answer, I know, but sometimes when we're working with advertising, maybe there's already an idea of a commercial spot or something, and then I can use my techniques and skills to kind of modify that spot. But if I'm starting from the beginning, it's very common that I'm doing workshops with approximately 10 people, and then we often start with these, which some kind of sets the mind it gets it going, and from that we can also see if quite often there are stories from their specific company, because they're often a mix. Someone wants to tell something that happened on their vacation, and then later on in the workshop, maybe someone wants to talk about a customer or something that happened during their working life. So sometimes we could also highlight those. It's kind of different, but that is one way to approach it. I'd say that's the most common way to start with a workshop.
I got a question here about, do you do those workshops in English?
To be honest, I haven't done it in English yet. And these are, as you might have seen, these are in Swedish, but I mean, that could be fixed. I definitely think the techniques are the same in Swedish as in English. So I do them in English, definitely.
Yeah. A follow-up question on you working with storytelling. You also, as a UX writer, how do you use storytelling in that kind of work?
I think it would be wrong to say that when I'm writing the UX text or the UX copy, that maybe hasn't so much to do with storytelling, because it's just not the nature of it. But what could be very useful is to, when we are working on user stories or trying to understand our users, could be a really good thing to craft a story, how they interact or with the services, or what their background is and what their challenges might be. So that could be one way to unite the working group, the UX group, or even the stakeholders and so on, to make them more understandable. I think that is a good way to use an engaging story.
Yeah, that's understandable. I have a couple of more questions. Is there a specific technique you enjoy using to be extra memorable in a short interaction with another person?
To be very honest, I sometimes I have to say to myself that, come on, just use some of the senses, because it can, at the beginning, can feel a bit strange to do it. But if you start doing that and just like bring in something, how it felt, or maybe how it smelled, I assure you it's going to lift your anecdote or anything. So I would say that's probably the most effective way to just like boost your short story. I think that's maybe the best one.
Okay. And another question, maybe it could be in connection with that, just like meeting one person, or how can you effectively use body language in storytelling without overshadowing the story, and how do you smoothly collaborate with other storytellers to create seamless transitions from your story to their story? That's like two questions in one.
Yeah, okay, maybe you have to repeat that second question first, but start with the body language. Well, how do you okay, I don't know if this is a good answer to this question, but I think that when you probably have some greatest hits yourself, right? That is a story that you, maybe your friend asked you to tell, repeat, that they've heard before. And when you're doing that, you kind of like training up your skill in that specific story. And I think as a result of that, your body language will kind of follow through in that. Maybe you find where to point, or I'll do different stuff. But I don't have like a general tip. It should feel authentic and natural. So if it doesn't, use what you are comfortable in doing.
Yeah.
And the second question was something
How
about
do you collaborate with other storytellers.
how do I collaborate with other storytellers? For example, if there's a commercial spot or something and we should build it together.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like creating music. If someone is doing that, it's when you start to try different angles of a story, you will actually feel how, if the feeling's there, you will notice. I've never had the problem that I really want one thing and another person says, no, that's completely wrong. We have to go this way. It kind of falls naturally in place when you have the backbone of the story. So when you're collaborating, yeah.
I think it depends on how well both the two different people are at collaborating. It's like two designers collaborating with two musicians, or of course.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Let's see what else we have. How would you suggest using AI such as ChatGPT is in the best and most effective way to get better at storytelling?
I would be very restrictive with using AI, because you could do that as a start, or maybe it can help you to come up with ideas. But one thing that I'm trying really to push on is that you should tell your own story, with your own. I mean, some people are talking very slowly. I can be a bit too quick when I'm talking, but you have to find your own. You want to hear your own voice and your own style. And of course, I've tried out some ChatGPT, and it was very fun, but still, I mean, probably it's just a couple of weeks away. But as I can see right now, it doesn't get, for me, it doesn't really get authentic. But use it as a calling, or something like that. But I wouldn't. I don't think you're gonna get an authentic, organic story if you just tell the AI to write a 3-minute story for me. It should be about riding a bike and seeing a car accident or something at Södermalm in Stockholm. I don't think it's gonna. I mean, I'm ready to be proven wrong also.
But I have experience working with you where we were supposed to write some text about like compliance within law firms, and you had an idea of like, why not ask like, what kind of obstacles would a person working in this area have in his daily working life?
Yeah.
And that gave you some ideas and topics to work about. And then you have to, of course, make sure with the client, is this relevant? But I think that was a really clever way to use ChatGPT to just get some ideas on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
And back to your like the tips, getting the obstacles and what's at stake for this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I don't want to be like sounding old school. I really think that AI could be really helpful also. So
yeah. Cool. What would you say is an absolute no-no within storytelling?
Okay. In my way to look at storytelling, I think if you want to call something a story and nothing happens, nothing like the example I gave, I would never call that a story, because I don't think it has anything to, doesn't carry all these emotional values, the human aspect that is so strong and that is so powerful. So if it's just like I was talking to earlier, which is just a narrative, I see it often. In my opinion, I don't say it's worth, like useless. It can definitely have have its place somewhere, but I don't think I would call that a story if nothing happens.
You were talking about not every detail need to be exactly the truth, because just to be confident and tell a good story, it's better to just work with that. But everyone is talking about authenticity and transparency. Where's the line? Like, doesn't it have to be really authentic?
I think one thing has to be authentic, and that is the feeling, that's the emotion, or maybe the what you experience from it, what you learn from the story. But everything around it, I would definitely say that you could tweak that. For example, if it suits better on the worst day of your life, maybe it was like super nice weather outside and everyone was happy. Maybe it's better to have like pouring rain outside just to make it a bit more dramatic. I would definitely go for that. And also, let's say that you are a group of 5 people, and 3 of them, they don't really have a function in the story. They don't do anything. They're just like your entourage or something. But your best friend is having a function. I wouldn't talk so much about those 3. I would say that me and my friend, we were out in the city, even if we were 5 or something like that. So I would definitely tweak stories and, like, shave off some. I think that's necessary.
There are questions, more and more questions coming, and from Gustav: is it fundamental to keep a red line in storytelling by incorporating emotions, smells, visuals, and energy while maintaining clarity and consistency?
Okay, so what I kind of sense here is that no, it's definitely not super important. After all, and this can be a bit tricky, but at the end of the day, it has to be the emotional value, I'd say. So these techniques that I presented, for example, like use the senses, you don't necessarily have to do that. It's just a very effective way to boost your story. But you don't have to follow any technique, to be honest, as long as it carries some kind of emotion. I'm really looking for the feeling here. So I don't know if that was an answer to that question, but I would say no, it doesn't have to be super consistent. But one thing, sorry, is that what I could mention here is that sometimes people have like this big odysseys when they're my dad, for example, he wants to tell his whole time at the well, school or something, 3 years in one story, and that is not really good. So I would really encourage you to like frame it. Maybe a period of 1 week is enough. Maybe that's a bit too much. So talk about something that happened during one day or a couple of minutes, not like half a year. That would be too well, not very sharp, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another one. There's so long, so I have to read it. Right?
Oh, wow.
So if nobody, no, it's the same as but it's like it's hard to.
It's a story.
You mentioned not getting lost in being super factual when you're trying to deliver a strong story, but if the specifics are not factual and then someone actually checks them, how do we navigate from there?
I would try to check up the facts. If you're saying that, if you're like coming up with, it sounds better that 20 million people live in Sweden, so I say that. I mean, that's not, I wouldn't recommend that. But if someone has checked up that, no, you know what, for 3 weeks ago in Malmö, it wasn't pouring rain. I think you should be very honored that they are putting so much in it. So well, I don't know if that's an answer, but I've never been fact checked.
You can also be like think not pulling the truth in in big ways. Not like Donald Trump, like how many was at his
rally, yeah.
Or like when you became president, and there's facts. So of course, to be specific, you can choose the minor
definitely
details.
Yeah,
maybe. There's a lot of huge interest in the workshops.
Oh, that's fine.
So there's one person who really would like to have a workshop right now and put on the cameras and do some workshopping. And someone asked about, do you do workshop for private persons?
I could maybe. I've never done it with my friends and stuff like that, but let's get in touch. We can talk about it.
And I think it's
definitely do
like
a
good idea to have like this is a Frank talk, but we could have a Frank workshop.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Maybe that's a good idea. So thank you, Gustav, for that idea. And we have one more question. You shared 1 or 2 slides in this presentation. How important and what role would you say great visualization has on providing a great story and getting that great feel?
Good question, I think, because one of the big things with storytelling is that if you're telling a story with your voice, it is so fun to be a listener, to make up your own scenes. And that is one major point with this sensory descriptions. And that is a fun part as a listener. If you get everything served, like here you have all the facts, all the visuals, how it looked, blah, 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 then you leave nothing to the listener to like be one of the co-creators of the story, I would say. So I would say it's not that important at all to have a lot of visuals and stuff like that.
Okay. I think that was that was the last question. Now we're going to take the last question here. From Gustav. Do you often incorporate a call and a response from your audience when speaking? A bit like stand-up.
No, I don't understand. A call and a response. How?
Yeah, you incorporate the
storytelling,
incorporate the listeners into your stories.
Yes. Yes, I actually prefer that. It's so nice to have all of you here digitally, but it's even better if to like have seen your reactions to because that makes my storytelling better. So, and if I can see something, you mean like a stand-up comedian or something, I mean, sure, you can take pauses and you can wait for yeah, I prefer that to have the people in front of me. It's some energy that's getting lost a bit when you're doing this way.
Mm. And one more, how to use the voice. Should you think about that?
Yes. Okay, it's like a very quick tip. A good way to find your voice is when you say, hmm, hmm, hmm. That that is actually where you should supposed to, that's your register. Did you say that in English? That's where you should be. That's your normal or most casual, comfortable way. Hmm, hmm. You know, when you're like confirming someone, you can practice that as a start.
Of course, yeah, and you feel like you're sound more confident if you're not like, oh,
Of course, yeah.
or talking too fast or too slow, or could you have too long pauses?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so I'm so glad so many of you posted questions, and I'm so happy that so many was able to join. So thank you, Michael, for giving us this talk and great inspirations and tools. And you, for your listeners, please, you can become a member at our Frank Talk page at Meetup. So then you will notice when there's a new talk coming, if you're not already. So yeah, thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope you see you next time. Bye.
Bye.